Candy Graft. I'll stay strong morning too.
Okay, we now have Peter Lupia. He's running for County Clerk and Recorder in El Paso County. And he has not said one thing that I don't agree with at this point in time. He's pretty awesome.
That's absolutely zero pressure. Thanks a lot. Well, good evening, everybody. I am here, I guess I have to actually start it. I am here tonight to talk with you a little bit about the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. So, I'll give you a little campaign spiel at the end too, for sure. But this is a very, very important issue for our time right now. So if you're not aware, that's why we're here doing this conversation, but roles like the clerk and recorder are so important, county sheriff, etc. And those are the people that are the lesser magistrates. So that's who we're talking about. You've, of course, got the president, and you go all the way down to really city council type people. And so all along the line, there are opportunities for people to stand up and make a difference. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So the role of government, or the creation of government, has been kind of determined by different philosophies over time. A number of different countries have, you had the Romans, you had the Greeks, you had all these different people trying all kinds of different things. And over time, there have been a number of people that have gone to the Bible, as they should, because the Bible has everything for us there, right? Everything we do in life. And so, in particular, they've gone to Romans 13 verses, go back. Romans 13, specifically verses 1 through 5, to claim that we should be giving unlimited obedience to the government. That's not what this says. So if I'm not going to read all 5 verses to you, but I would like you to take a look at the 2 areas, verse 3 and verse 4, that are underlined there. Because that we're going to refer back to that in just a few minutes. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. And for God's minister, for he, the magistrate, is God's minister to you for good. So I think we would all agree that we might not be seeing that right now from people in our government. So the government doesn't deserve, nor is it entitled to our unlimited obedience according to the Bible. There's a few proofs of that. Nowhere in the Bible does it say to give unlimited obedience. Nowhere. It's not in there. So the divine right of kings, which was developed by men, is where this came from. Where men, kings, tyrants, whatever you want to call them, came up and decreed that they would be the ones who were due all of this obedience. Unfortunately, over time, there have been a number of Christian leaders over the centuries that have endorsed them. Popes have endorsed kings, have endorsed others, and decreed those sorts of things. So the reality is there are no contradictions in the Bible where the Bible tells us to give full obedience. We'll move on here to another proof. Proof number 2, if you look at proper scripture interpretation, which is called the Hermetic method, what that tells us is that only scripture should be used to interpret scripture. Not someone's opinion, not some guy, not some PhD, whoever. Scripture should be used to interpret scripture. And so what that tells us is you can't come to the conclusion that unlimited obedience is due to the federal government, civil government. And there's a number of examples of people who disobeyed for godly reasons, and they were commended, protected, promoted by God. So Exodus 1, we had the midwives, of course, who disobeyed the command from the king, or the Pharaoh, actually, to murder all Hebrew male babies. In Daniel 6, of course, Daniel defied the king's order to pray to no other deity except for the king.
Hebrews 11 is actually referring to Exodus 1, but it's the story of Moses' parents hiding him from being killed. 2 Corinthians is Paul's story of evading unlawful capture when they were trying to falsely imprison him. So there are multiple more examples of that, but that's just a few. And then so when we look at proof number 3, we actually, this is where I'm going to ask you to, I'll just go back to it, refer back to those areas that are underlined. A lot of people will use verses 1 and 5 to try to demonstrate that there is obedience required. And the reality is, as we see there, verse 3 and verse 4 are very specific in saying that the role of the governor, whoever it is to do good, not evil. And so in no place in the Bible does God reward or tell us to obey unrighteous or ungodly acts or commands or decrees or anything like that. So anybody who's doing so is clearly breaking their bond with their godly intention. And that's proof number 3 that we just talked about in there. We also see this actually as well in 1 Peter 2, where it talks about the same thing. The purpose of government is to promote righteousness and reward it and punish evil. So what specifically is the doctrine of the lesser magistrates? The lesser magistrate doctrine declares that when superior or higher civil authorities make unjust or immoral laws, decrees, or mandates, then the lesser or lower ranking civil authorities have both a right and a duty to refuse obedience to that superior authority. If and when necessary, the lesser authorities have an obligation to actively resist the superior authority. Okay? And this is not new thinking. If you look at the history, this actual terminology, the doctrine of the lesser magistrates, was put together in 1550 by a group of Lutheran pastors and reformers meeting in Germany. And there were a couple of very distinguished works that were done, both in 1558, talking specifically about what had come out of the Maddenberg Confession. And both of those books, if you look at them a little bit, long story short, they are coming straight out and telling the lesser magistrates who were practicing in Scotland and other parts of Europe, you cannot just hide behind, well, I was just doing my duty. I was just following orders. That doesn't fly. So what are the guiding principles of the lesser magistrate? The first one is that the position is rooted in interposition. So if you're not familiar with the word, interposition means basically being willing to step into the gap. Put yourself in the way of harm. Get between an oppressor and an intended victim. So the lesser magistrate then is asked to interpose for the people. Put themselves between unjust laws, decrees, mandates, etc. of a higher authority and act in defense of the rule of law. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the rule of law here in just a second. The second principle is that all authority is delegated. There is nobody that has authority in civil government that is able to practice in autonomy, full autonomy. There is no position like that. The authority they possess is delegated to them by God, first and foremost, and then the people who put them in that position. So that's who they have to stand accountable to. Now, a tyrant, we might think of a few examples of that going on in recent days. A tyrant, of course, is someone who then steals authority that is not given to them. You heard it here, not first, but they violate the law of the land. They assault people's person, property, or liberty, and more specifically, in our situation, they violate the Constitution and do so willingly. So principle number 3, the primary duty of a lesser magistrate is threefold: to oppose and resist any laws or edicts from a higher authority that contravenes the law or word of God, right? Our first responsibility is vertical. Protect the person, liberty, and prosperity of those who reside within their jurisdiction from the unjust or immoral action. And then not to implement, and if necessary, resist laws, decrees, or mandates made by a higher authority that violate the rule of law or the Constitution. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not, You don't have to make a lot of decisions. Is this godly? Is it going to hurt people? Should I be doing this? So principle number 4 is that God's law is the objective standard. Everything is compared against that. There is nothing else to compare it to. And disobedience from a lesser magistrate is also not subjective. They are only justified in defying the higher authority when the authority is clearly going against the will of God and or attacking person, liberty, property, or the Constitution. So we've got the rule of law. I said we were going to get to that here in a second. The rule of law, simply stated, is the law is king. All are subject to the laws of the land. King and commoner, government official and citizen. No one should be above the law. We should all be the exact same law. So it needs to be equally applied. Christian leaders and other government authorities over time came up with what is known as the rule of law. It's biblical practice mixed together and formalized with civic and civil government. And how should that look? It's the rule of law. It's been practiced in the Western countries for close to 1,500 years. It's been the standard. Now, of course, we're watching it over just the past couple of decades, even more so in the last 12 months, crumble. And so now's the time when lesser magistrates are going to have to step up and interpose and authority. Also, a subordinate, if they need to, should interpose to stop something that's going on that's not appropriate. What do we do if we have a tyrannically minded higher magistrate? Higher authority likes to be obeyed, right? I don't think we know of anybody that is in charge that is willing to cede their authority. So the lesser magistrate has to understand that this is the time to interpose. There will be a fight. And in many cases, and I'm going to mention a name here that many people will recognize, Tina Peters. Yeah. They're going to be maligned, they're going to be attacked, they're going to be assaulted. And that is something that you have to be willing to understand as a magistrate, and a lesser magistrate at that. So what is the role of we the people? Role of the people in helping the lesser magistrates and participating in the doctrine is the protest. Now when I say protest, we just had the opportunity to get to a protest, but we're not necessarily talking about waving signs and standing outside and yelling and screaming, but registering your protest, writing, coming to speak, etc., etc. Let those in authority know that you're not happy with what's going on. So the role of the people is to let the magistrate know their concern, and then rally behind the magistrate when they actually take action on your concern and start to speak on it. The lesser magistrate often cannot. In some cases, their hands are tied. Most of the time, they just will not act until people have started to assert their rights and some pressure on them and plead their case. But once a good magistrate knows that the people are not happy and knows that there are concerns, it's that magistrate's job to step forward and take up the cause. If it is, again, godly and righteous, right? So, something very important that I learned in going through here that had never really struck me 100%. When your laws mirror God's laws and God's justice and His righteousness, it actually helps people to see their need for Christ. And a lot of people want to separate church and state and the whole yada, yada, yada. And of course, we know that that's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. But when you've got bad laws, it just encourages people to continue to sin and to see their sin as being, in their own minds, righteous and justified. So, at its very core, the role of the magistrate is important to make sure that we've got godly and justly laws, because in the end, as it says up there, the salvation of souls is ultimately what's is the most important thing, and that's what's really on the table in the whole situation. We're not going to talk about it. This is all in the book. I would highly recommend everybody get a copy of the book. It's only about 90 pages long, I think. They're about 70 pages, actually, and then there's some appendices. and other things. I'm not even touching on those topics up there, law enforcement and peace officers, the military. There's a whole big section on the military and the chain of command in the military, and we are watching that completely crumble and fall apart right in front of our eyes these days. The current administration is just giving commander-in-chief bad leadership, which is being carried down and followed blindly by so many. And every once in a while, a patriot, a lesser magistrate steps up. We see a lieutenant colonel here or a colonel there, somebody down the command who immediately gets silenced and gets booted out. So they're following this doctrine, and there's a lot in there on that. And then there's a whole section as well on the biblical response to people who want to talk about disarmament and pacifism. So the Bible doesn't teach that anywhere. Quite the contrary. So very interesting. But the book was published in 2013, and there's a section there called The Doctrine in Our Day that talks very specifically about things that are going on in the world at that particular time. A lot of them you'll recognize are still going on, and or they've gotten worse. So it was truly inspired for a time such as this. So, transitioning here for the last few minutes, as your clerk and recorder, how do I intend to interpose as your magistrate? First and foremost, election security is on top of my list. We're going to get rid of all the Dominion voting machines. We're going to deliver annual budgets and plans that call to defund the machines, cancel the contracts, get them out of here. We're going to create plans in the process for returning back to paper ballots. We're going to focus on election integrity. So we're going to challenge and resist any of those illegal orders coming down from the state, especially when it's to outlaw or bar doing real audits. So our current curriculum recorder and others would tell you that they have done audits every year, but these random audits that they do are very controlled all the way along and really don't tell you anything. So we're going to, of course, advocate with the legislature to get rid of all of the things that we can. Ballot harvesting, the statewide mail-in ballot system. I guess if they want to mail ballots out, that's fine, but you need to show up at a polling place, turn in your ballot with some ID if you want to cast that vote. We're going to partner with officials in law enforcement, judicial, both inside and outside of El Paso County, to expose and refer for investigation election fraud at every level. It's not just happening here. And try to get back control over our own voter rolls. If you don't know, the voter rolls are right now stored in a shared database with 31 other states. There are 32 states worth of voter rolls in there. And actually, I read a quote from a Democrat who said we shouldn't even call it Eric, we should call it error because it is so inaccurate. So, and then of course we're going to serve the community. So we want to explore opportunities to increase the services in the service centers. Of course, the clerk and recorder is responsible for the DMV. So we'd like to see what we can do to make that a more pleasant experience, reduce some waiting times, and get rid of some of the fees. They're fees, but they're taxes in reality that we didn't approve. So real quickly in closing here, how can we the people help? Most importantly, first and foremost, I'm going to say is caucus. Caucus. So on my website is up there. I have a bunch of information out back, and I have a list that you can sign up if you want to help us with any of this stuff. But on my website, I have a whole tab that's labeled Caucus. You can go there and get a lot of great information. I encourage you to get to one of the presentations that are going on. Just get informed, but we've got everything on our website that you should need to get involved. So you and your like-minded neighbors need to be involved, guys. This is the opportunity for every registered Republican to be involved. Everybody wants to say, oh, disenfranchise this or disenfranchise that. This is your opportunity. Get involved. Donate. I am in a countywide campaign, and my establishment competitor has a very large bank account at this point, saved up from prior elections. We'd love to have you host a meet and greet for us or something like that with your business or friends, again, like-minded folks. And then we'd love to have you join our team. We need volunteers to do all kinds of stuff, make phone calls, and all sorts of things as the campaign goes along. So with that, I am through, I believe. Am I taking questions now? Okay, so I'll take questions.
Am I correct? Is this on? Yes. Can you hear me?
Just keep talking.
I can.
Tech guy will.
I'll repeat the question.
It's on.
Go ahead, I'll repeat.
Okay, am I correct in stating that you can order that lesser magistrate book from jbs.org?
You are correct. The question was, can you order that, where can you get that book? John happens to know a website that I'm familiar with as well, jbs.org, if you'd like to get a copy of that book. And it's quick shipping and arrival and very cost-effective way to do that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Raise your hand.
Who are you running against?
Who am I running against? At the moment, there's only one other registered candidate. He is also a Republican. His name is Steve Schleicher, and he is the current El Paso County assessor. So he has been the assessor for 8 years and is looking to just make the next step up the ladder. But he's term limited out, so he's got to go somewhere. We'd like to send him home. But he and I are not in agreement in the majority of what I shared with you this evening. So if you see who his association is, you'll understand why.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Kelsey here. My question is, you know, I've taken a lot of time to talk to the county commissioners and, you know, people at large, right, in the GOP community. How are you, or how do you expect to get rid of Dominion? Like, what is your plan to get rid of Dominion? Because I've talked to your office. So, what is your plan?
So my plan to get rid of Dominion, as the clerk and recorder, you have the responsibility of turning in your budget on an annual basis that says how you're going to perform your duties. And part of that line item is how are you going to run elections. And so from talking to people who are informing me and helping me understand the statutes and talking with other clerk and recorders around the state, the clerk and recorder has the total authority to submit a budget that includes $0 for the maintenance, upkeep, and operation of the Dominion machines in their county. And then, ultimately, the county commissioners are the ones who sign the contracts with the state to control Dominion. So I can go to the county commission and say, I'm not proposing a budget that includes the use of Dominion machines. I'm proposing a budget that includes hand counts or whatever we want to do. And then it's up to the county commission to either then vocally and publicly force the use of Dominion or work with the county clerk to implement the plan that they'd like to put forward. So ultimately, the county commission has to make the decision, and that's where the pressure has to go. So as the clerk, I'm not going to propose at any point in time any money for anything related to Dominion other than dismantling it, maybe. And then we're going to put the commissioner's feet to the fire to cancel the contracts or let them expire. I don't know specifically when our county contracts expire with Dominion, but we let those either expire or we have them canceled. And that's how we do it. There are 3 counties in the state right now that do not use Dominion. I would intend to make us the 4th. And if that involves a lawsuit, that's what some of the other counties had to do. So we'll do what we need to do.
One more question. Is there anyone who has a question? Sorry. Oh,
Hi, David Winnie, running for Secretary of State. One question for you. I haven't studied this yet myself, but just curious if you have, is what control do you have as a clerk and recorder over the voter rolls in your county? Just curious.
So the clerk and recorder has the job of providing the Secretary of State with the most accurate, up-to-date voter rolls that we can. They then go into the ERIC system that we mentioned earlier, and then the state, interestingly, then gets to tell the county who ballots are going to. So in this particular case, the ERIC system has about 17,000 more registered voters for El Paso County than what the clerk and recorder has reported to them. So, and for whatever that's worth, there's no way for the El Paso County clerk to go in and clean that up. So ideally, we'd like to fight for legislation and work with the new Secretary of State, Mr. David Winnie, who did not get his 2 minutes up here. I think he got here a little late, but all right. But ideally, we'd love to roll that back and figure out how to get Colorado out of being on that. And certainly, part of it to support that.
Thank you. That was very informative and very exciting to hear. So I love that. All right, next. We have a gentleman named Dave Williams. He's the current representative here in Colorado, and he is running for Congress, and he would be looking to replace Lamborn. So he's also been endorsed by Restore Liberty, and so I'm going to let him tell you more about him because I forgot my phone at home. So it's his job. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone being here. I know there was a competing event, but I can tell you that I've spoken to a much smaller crowd, so I appreciate everyone that has taken time out of their Tuesday nights to listen to a bunch of candidates speak. Word of advice, though, this is what I tell all people, every voter, every citizen I talk to. Don't trust any politician. Don't even trust me. The best question you could ever ask yourself is, what does the politician have to gain if I believe what they say? Once you start asking that follow the money type question, you're going to be better off and you're going to be able to wade through the BS and get to the truth. I'm Dave Williams. I'm running for Congress. I'm currently House District 15 state representative, and I've been serving for the past 5 years, going on 6 now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm running because, like all of you, I'm tired of politicians who say one thing and then but they do another when they get elected. Hypocrisy is ruining our country and it's ruining our party. We need less Mitch McConnells, we need less Mitt Romneys, we need less John McCain's, we need more Jim Jordans, we need more Lauren Boeberts, we need more Marjorie Taylor Greenes, we need more fighters in all of My record is pretty straightforward. Who's been to a caucus training with Brad Collins or others here? It's a great training. If you haven't gone to it, I recommend that you go to it. But Brad likes to tell people about the voting record of all of the representatives, especially here in El Paso County. I'm one of 2, pretty much, well, I can't say statewide, there's probably a few others that have an A as well, but at least in El Paso County, I'm one of 2 that actually has an A-rated score on the independent watchdog that is the Republican Liberty Caucus. They rank everyone's voting records. And I can tell you that Republicans up in the state capitol, they do not actually care about the platform. There's only a handful of us that do. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. How many of you have heard so many Republicans run for office and they talk about how if you just give me power, everything will change. And then when they get into power, they don't do anything for anyone. I mean, how many times have we had control of the presidency, of Congress, and nothing happens? It's because they're all a bunch of liars. They're all a bunch of crooks. Not all of them. There's actually a few that are good. But my point is this, ladies and gentlemen, we're never going to change that culture until we throw the bums out and put fighters in who are actually going to serve you and not their own interests. My record is simple. Like I said, I've been A-rated. I've been endorsed by Restore Liberty. I've been endorsed by Conservative Action PAC. So more information will follow on that. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been fighting for the rights of the unborn. I've been fighting for our Second Amendment. I'm actually suing Governor Polis right now. And guess what? We're winning. We just won a pretty major case that is going to allow us to move forward with our lawsuit, but the governor doesn't like it. And he's asked the Supreme Court of Colorado to intervene, so we'll see what happens there. Ladies and gentlemen, I've also fought for limited government, lower taxation. I can't begin to tell you how many Republicans will lie to your face that they believe that government should be limited, they should have lower taxes. But if you actually look at the record, look at the county commissioners, for example. Look at your state legislative Republicans who vote to put tax questions on the ballot when they say otherwise as a campaign. I've never done that. I will never do that. Because government is not the solution to our problem, as Ronald Reagan said. It is the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I truly believe. And another thing he said, which is near and dear to my heart, is that if we're going to secure liberty, if we're going to secure freedom, then we have to fight for it. Each generation has to fight for it because it's one generation away from us losing it. And that's something that we have to hold dear, right? Ben Franklin said it best. It's a republic if you can keep it. Ladies and gentlemen, the republic is burning right now. The barbarians are at the gates. Everything is going to hell and handbasket. And right now we need a new congressman who will actually stand up and fight for you. Not one who will cower, who will duck and run when things get hot. Who here knows who Lauren Boebert is? Yeah. Right. I just want to point this out. She's only been elected for about a year. Doug Lamborn has been elected for 8 terms, nearly 16 years. He does need to go, but I want to make this point very clear to you. Lauren Boebert has risen to national prominence because she takes us the Democrats every single day that she's up there. And I'll tell you right now that Doug Lamborn in his 8 terms, 16 years that he's been here, barely anyone can really know what he's done, and actually say his name. Lauren Boebert is more popular in El Paso County than Doug Lamborn. That's a problem. This is a safe Republican district. We need another Jim Jordan. We need another Madison Cawthorn. We need another Lauren Boebert. We need another Marjorie Taylor Greene. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what I intend to do. If you vote for me, then I'm going to vote for you each and every day I'm in the halls of Congress. Guaranteed. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't tend to give long speeches because I think it's more important to take questions, especially since I'm asking you for a job. You guys are the boss. I work for you. That's the same attitude I had when I ran for my state house district. That's the same attitude that I'm going to take when I go to Congress. And so I want to take as many questions as I can because this is essentially a job interview. And if I don't pass muster, then I'm not going to win your vote, and I get to go home and take a break from politics. But I intend to defeat Doug Lamborn, and I will be your next congressman. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I will be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Are there going to be debates?
I intend to debate Doug Lamborn every opportunity I get. Traditionally, Doug Lamborn has not wanted to debate his opponents because he's not really great at public speaking, and he knows it. And more likely than not, he's not even going to go through the caucus or assembly process because he's afraid to actually look you in the eye and explain his record, a record that is lackluster. He doesn't want you to know that all he's been doing is serving himself and not your interests. So instead, he's going to go ahead and hire a bunch of petition gatherers and go buy his way onto the ballot and hope that uninformed voters send him to another term. So yes, I will debate Doug Lamborn every opportunity I get. I will even challenge Doug Lamborn publicly and vocally to come here and answer the tough questions because that's what you all deserve. But whether or not he does, I can't say. But ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. Do you want a fighter or do you want a coward representing you? I think the choice is simple. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about Doug Lamborn's current lawsuit and the investigation he's under and why that's such a problem for someone who's supposed to be working out?
Sure, you bet. I think there's so the question had to do with Doug Lamborn's ethics violations and lawsuit that he's dealing with right now. I think there's a misconception here. There's a lot of people that I run into that are not impressed with Doug or his service, but they kind of say, well, he's kind of a nice guy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, he's not really a nice guy, and he doesn't want you to know that. Sure, he'll put his best foot forward when he's trying to earn your vote. And by the way, that's probably the only time he actually talks to you is when he wants to try to get your vote. But here's the sad truth. This is an individual that has abused his office. He has used taxpayer resources to enrich himself. One of the aspects of the lawsuits that has been discussed in the press a little bit is workplace retaliation. There was a veteran, his name was Brandon Pope, used to work in Congressman Lamborn's office. He didn't like how the office was operating with respect to safety protocols that were going on. Now, I don't really care about COVID safety protocols. I don't think anyone here does either. But when people want to wear masks, and it's their own choice, okay, let it happen, right? Who are we to say you can or cannot wear a mask? This is why we're fighting government in the first place, is to make sure that people aren't telling us how to live our lives or practice whatever health practices that you want to practice. In any event, he spoke up because he felt that he wasn't being respected in the workplace, and so Doug Lamborn fired him. And it was because of workplace retaliation. And then you had our former county party chair here in El Paso, his name is Josh Hostler, who also worked in Doug Lamborn's office, doesn't work anymore, attest to the workplace retaliation that's going on. But that's not even the worst of it. That's kind of just something that's a little inside baseball. The point is he doesn't treat his staff well. For all of you who don't know, Doug Lamborn let his son live in the basement of the Capitol building to avoid high DC rent. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what else to say about that. It's so absurd, it's so ridiculous that it shouldn't you can't make this stuff up. It's stranger than fiction, right? And he admitted to it. He said he wanted to help his son avoid high DC rents. I don't know about you, but I'm an average citizen. None of you get that same kind of benefit, right? But here he is abusing the office in that way. There's also allegations about him using his office for his campaign efforts. That's illegal. That's highly illegal. You can't use taxpayer dollars to help yourself win re-election. But again, Doug thinks the rules are beyond him. We had just had a conversation about how the law needs to apply to everyone. When it comes to Doug Lamborn, he doesn't think so. There was an accusation that Doug Lamborn, and I believe it to be true based off of the people that I've been talking to, there's an accusation that he required his staff members to buy him Christmas gifts. Right? I mean, these are things that aren't really reported on because we have an establishment media who wants to keep the status quo. And so they don't even want to talk about these issues. I'm not afraid of these issues. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. If you're corrupt, you gotta go. Period. That's not what I initially want to focus on per se, but it's something I'll certainly talk about. I mean, what you guys really should also be upset about is his voting record. He voted for Planned Parenthood funding. I don't know if you guys understand that or know that, but I don't care who you are. You're not a nice guy if you're funding baby killers. Period. This is an individual who voted to red flag members of our military and justify it because it was an imperfect bill. I don't care who you are. If there is something that's not perfect, don't vote for it. Don't compromise. When you're in the legislature, when you're in a political position, and I know it because I've lived through it, they try to do everything to make you compromise on your principles. They try to give you a poison pill and they say, oh, just do it. Take half a loaf. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Ladies and gentlemen, evil is evil. Period. End of discussion. This is an individual who voted to draft our daughters and our sisters and our mothers into the military. Right? This is an individual that said we need to have critical race theory training for our military. This is an individual that pushed LGBTQ training in our military. And people don't know it because they've been fooled, they've been hoodwinked. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time is now. We have a new congressional district. We need a new congressman. To everything there's a season. This is what's written in Scripture. Ezekiel. Now's the time. We've had someone in there for 8 terms, 16 years. Hasn't accomplished much, anything for us, but certainly for himself. I think it's time we send Doug home and relieve him from the burden of serving. I've not.
Okay, that is not being taught in the military. My family's military, my son's still in, my son-in-law's still in. It is not being taught in the military.
Through the most recent NDA vote, they put in a provision. I'm sorry, ma'am. They put in a provision that requires for CRT and LGBTQ training. This just passed this past November. So while they may not be doing it now, it's coming, and Doug Lamborn voted for it.
Right, he did vote for it, but it's not being taught there now.
It will be because it passed.
So I do have one question. So Doug Lamborn is a senior member of the Armed Service Committee, and he votes to run the service company. He brought in $3 billion of economic activity to the defense industry. As a military vet and family of military, why would we give that up and vote for you? I mean, not very to be whatever, but I'm just kind of curious what you would do to keep that kind of thing.
Well, first off, that's a bunch of fiction. Doug Lamborn hasn't done anything for anyone. He'll take credit that he brought in $3 billion of economic activity, but he didn't do that, number one. Number two, so what? The guy has been in Congress for 8 terms. He was the honorary co-chairman for Donald Trump, and yet we still lost Space Command. What has he actually been doing for any of you? There's this belief that just because he has seniority, therefore he's better. Ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and the like, they've been in Congress for many years, and have they actually done anything for any of you? The answer is no. The same is with Doug Lamborn. He's been passed over for a number of things, and he's been there longer than some other people that have surpassed him, such as Lauren Boebert. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something. If you could have a Lauren Boebert representing you and Congressional District 5, would you take it in a heartbeat? Yes. I rest my case. Sir? Or ma'am?
Well, you talked about corruption. What will you do for the people of Colorado to restore our faith that these people in government will be prosecuted and put in prison? I mean, we have too many years of politicians that are nothing more than they're lawless people who get away with, what we're not supposed to see is they have their rules and then our rules. And to restore our faith that our vote is going to count and these people are going to be prosecuted, what are you going to do? How are you going to do that?
That's a great question. Well, first off, what we need to do is we need to do whatever we can to help people like Peter Lupia win his election. I'm not going to support anyone. I don't care if they're the dog catcher. If they're not committed to getting rid of Dominion, if they're not committed to election integrity, I'm not voting for them. And neither should any of you. Number one. Number two, and I can guarantee this because I've already done it. If you don't believe me, ask some of the people that do know me that are in the crowd tonight. But I'm going to hold Republican politicians accountable. I'm a firm believer that we need to hold Democrats accountable, but if we can't clean house first, then we're never going to get there. There are Republican officials here in this town who support Dominion, who support tax increases. They support all sorts of measures that increase the size and scope of government, but yet they lie to you. So the first best thing we can do is kick them out of office, take away their power and return it back to the people. Secondly, I want to work with all of you to gather as much evidence as possible, and I already have. I'm working with an organization called Colorado Accountability Project. We've already uncovered a number of people who are not legally able, should not be legally able to vote, but they have cast a ballot somehow. And here in El Paso County alone, there's about 800 people that we've discovered thus far. And so what we want to do is we want to go to prosecutors, we want to go to the DAs, and we want to go to the clerks and get them to do something about it. If they don't do anything about it, then we exert political pressure on them. Let me tell you something. Politicians are like Pavlov's dog. They respond to pleasure and pain. And usually the politician wants to experience the pain, or pleasure, and avoid the pain. And so the best thing you can do is, if a politician isn't doing what you want, is to challenge their power. And essentially what I mean by that is, if they're not doing what you want, find someone to challenge them in the next election. And keep exerting that kind of pressure, and that will get them to change their tune. Nothing in politics gets done unless you push for it. And most politicians want to keep the status quo. So if we're going to win, we have to exert as much pressure as we can at the ballot box, in the press, and eventually with how they react. It looks like I might be... One more question here.
Hello. I actually have two questions. I agree. The first is, what exactly you were suing Jared Polis for? You kind of skirted over that, but I was wondering.
Oh, yeah, sure. To give a little bit more of details on that, they passed an unconstitutional red flag law. This was about a year and a half ago or so. Forgive me for the date, but they passed a red flag law. For those of you who are not familiar with red flag, you can essentially accuse your neighbor of being unstable or something, and they'll take away your guns without due process. So that's the law of the land right now. And so we're suing Governor Polis over that unconstitutional law, over some procedural stuff that's inside baseball. But essentially, they passed it inappropriately and contrary to how we're supposed to pass laws here in Colorado. And we're winning. We are winning the case on its merits. And so we look forward to continuing that litigation. And I'm partnering with Rocky Mountain gun owners to help finance the effort. Was that all?
My second question, kind of unrelated. What do you plan on doing in regards to vaccine mandates, specifically on the elementary school level?
Great. I plan to fight and oppose every and all mandates. In fact, I was calling, I don't know if anyone remembers School District 20, that whole debacle there. Tom Gregory's the superintendent. I was publicly calling for him to be fired, because he should. These individuals should not be allowed to make these types of rules. And if I'm elected to Congress, I'm going to work with vaccine choice organizations or medical autonomy organizations to make sure that your rights are protected. I'm going to let them draft legislation. Too often we have politicians who will say good things during a speech or in committee, but they won't actually put pen to paper, draft legislation, and force a vote. That's one of the best things we can do is force votes, because that exposes where the politicians are, and they don't want to be exposed. And the more you make them choose, the more they wise up and start doing the right thing. I think I'm going to get the hook here, so I'm just going to say this. I'm getting the hook. But I'm Dave Williams again. I'm running for Congress. Please visit my website. It's daveforcolorado.com. That's DAVEFOR Colorado.com. My phone number is 719-321-6363. That's my personal cell, 719-321-6363. And please call me if you have any questions. And please donate. Be a delegate for my campaign. Contact me. And I have some donation envelopes. I can't do this without you. If we're actually going to have change, if we're going to win, then I need your help. And so your envelope, my envelopes will be passed out to all of you. So please consider donating, even if it's just if you only donate once a month. Please consider me for this month or next, and help us seek the change we need and get a fighter. And let's go, Brandon.
I'm now going to introduce to you Kathy Stalick. She's the reason we're here tonight. Hey, Kathy. She came to me one day and she said, I want to start a group. So we did it. So this was her brainstorm. And I can't say enough good things about her. She's energetic. She's always happy. She has a great smile. She's kind of loud, but I like it. And the thing that I love about her most is that she really cares about what's going on in the world today, and she's doing something about it. So. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, that was nice. So tonight I'm talking about something that's important to me, and it's fear. It's important because people are living in fear constantly these days. It's a ridiculous amount of fears. However, even prior to that, people were living with tremendous amounts of anxiety. And these are things that I've felt from time to time. And I've seen people, though, that live with it severely a lot. But now we are at war. And, we have to kick
fear's butt because we have things to do. So I wanted to take some of the information that I have to share with you in case you ever run across some opportunities to feel a little fear. You might get COVID and think you're dying. You may, I mean, it really happens to some people. The minute they get it, they really get anxiety and think they're going to die. And these are people that come to this meeting. So I know it happens. And I had some fear at a protest I went to. I believe it was an Antifa member there, and I was being videotaped, and he was like the creepiest, most evil person I've ever seen in my life, and it went through my bones, and I was a little traumatized for a few days. However, you know, I know there are things like that that can happen to any of us, stepping forward to take on a political position when you've never done that before. Getting out there and telling people the way it is when maybe they haven't even heard the stories yet about what's going on because they're just in their own little bubble. Sometimes things like that. So, I wanted to talk about fear tonight. First of all, I'm going to read you something that someone gave me once that I think is beautiful. Be at peace. Do not fear the changes of life. Rather, look at them with full hope as they arise. God, whose very own you are, will deliver you from out of them. He has kept you hitherto, and he will lead you safely through all things. And when you cannot stand it, God will bury you in his arms. Do not be afraid of what may happen tomorrow. The same everlasting Father who cares for you today will take care of you then and every day. He will either shield you from suffering, or he will give you the unfailing strength to bear it. That's my favorite line. Be at peace and put aside all anxious thoughts and imaginations. That's by St. Francis de Sales. And I just love that. That is just beautiful to me and really supportive. I really have never been one that's, I've been outgoing my whole life, but I've never been somebody with a lot of courage. And this year, it's been something new for me, and it's God-given. It was a result of a lot of prayer. And so anytime I do pray, I actually do a lot of praying for myself because I need it a lot. And I was really answered in prayer this year with overcoming any fears and really becoming a little more courageous. And it grows like a muscle, which is exciting. So, fear is a response to danger. It is instinctive, it's physical, it's emotional. I'm sure we've all felt it from time to time for things that actually are fearful or things we just think might be scary. Fear steals joy and peace if we let it overwhelm us. Living in fear is not from God. God is not the source of fear and anxiety. That's the other guy. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. Philippians 4:7. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And then last, Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For your God will be with you wherever you go. So those are great Bible verses for you if you're starting to feel a little anxious. Definitely keep those in mind. Something I've noticed is there is no shortage of people with anxiety in the world. And there are so many things going on that I would wonder, why wouldn't people be loaded with anxiety? You know, think of our world today. There are EMFs everywhere, electromagnetic fields, from all the equipment we're surrounded by 24/7. Imagine the things that's doing to our bodies. Back in the day, they didn't have to deal with that. We have that everywhere. Television, people have that going all the time. Headsets in their ears, listening to music or podcasts or this or that, whatever people listen to all day when they have those things in their ears. social media, and the nastiness involved in that. Electronic games, the Xboxes, all the kids are addicted to. The babies are addicted to iPads and cell phones. They're being raised by them. 24/7 news cycles and the breakdown of the family and relationships. We have bad food and healthier living through pharmaceuticals. Yeah, we got that too. So imagine all those things, what they're doing to our bodies and our brains, and how we react to them, and we just lose control of these things. All of these things are damaging our health and also causing a continual cortisol release in our system as a result of the ongoing low-level anxiety we have daily. And cortisol is very damaging to your body, to have it being released all the time. And if at those low levels, it's just constant. You're going to get cancer. You're going to get sick. So we got to really get control over that. So when saber-toothed tigers and dinosaurs chased us, I'm just kidding, we weren't alive at that time. Okay, now that was fear. That was fear. Immediately, we had our fight or flight instinct triggered, which activates the alarm system in our bodies, ratcheting up the cortisol from the adrenal gland. Your heart rate speeds up, and then shuttling blood from your internal organs to your limbs, so you can either fight or flee. This instinct is from God for immediate life-saving purposes. God is not the source of fear. That was what we were given to our bodies to save us from those dinosaurs. Our default state is to err on the side of caution. So we're going to try to protect ourselves. Sometimes I don't like to debate with people who are idiots. That's subjective. That is subjective. And if I think you're an idiot, and I don't like to do that, and actually maybe that's a fear. I don't know, but I don't like to do it. One day, maybe I'll grow up and be able to handle that. So there are things like that, that we have to deal with. Some things you may be fearful of these days include the virus, the vaccine, loved ones dying, that is happening. Maybe you want to be in the fight, like protesting, or not wearing a mask in a place where they are requiring a mask. We go walk in there proudly, like we're pure bloods. And so, that could make you a little anxious. So, you might be on the FBI list. Whoa! Anybody here? as a terrorist, or sharing information with someone who doesn't think like you, which is one of those things that I don't like to do. Some of these don't seem that scary, but many people have a hard time doing these things and actually get a fight or flight feeling within them as a result. So, now, your fear is in high gear. What do? How do you get away from it and move forward? When you start to step out of your comfort zone and you're taking a perceived risk, ask yourself some questions. For example, first thing, what is the worst thing that can happen? When my husband and I were looking at opening a business and risking everything we had, we went, well, we could lose every job we have, we'll live on Social Security and have an apartment. Well, that wasn't so bad, so we went for it. So, you think those things through. What's the worst that could happen? So, then make a list of things. Will it kill me? No, very minimal risk of that. Will I be judged? Maybe. If I'm judged, what will happen to me? I'll feel uncomfortable. Probably. Let's see. Will it take time away from my comfort? Yeah, it probably will if you step out. What might result from my getting uncomfortable? I may be tired because I've worked all day. I can't do fun things. Can't watch my television shows, Yellowstone, which I know we all love. People, you are going to have to get uncomfortable. This is a freaking war. idiot. We are at war. We're going to get uncomfortable. So here we go. You answer to yourself and God. And are you doing anything in this fight? We're here. That's a great first start. We all have gifts and abilities. Think about what you can bring to the table. Keep bringing people to these events because we need to build an army, and that is extraordinary. And don't be scared to do new things. I didn't become courageous until this last year, like I said. I prayed for myself daily. God, give me courage. God, give me peace. God, use me. And I received answers on each one of these requests. And they were fast, and they were hard, and it was exciting. It was cool. So, I am not courageous in every way possible. I still don't, like I said, care for conflict or debate. I kind of threw that in already. But I have been working on that too. You need to step into fear. Anybody who has done anything great in their life did it scared shitless. Let's go forward and fight all the evil around us and fear not. The end. Here's a gentleman here. He was a total surprise this evening. And we just heard about him today. And he has a very interesting story to share with us this evening. And so we decided to share the stage with him for a few minutes. So welcome, Steve Ryder.
Rachel Stovall told me about this group, and I thought she had let Carla and Kathy know, and so Rachel said, "Hey, show up." And I showed up, and they were like, "Who are you?" And I told them my story, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's something we definitely need to talk about." All of us right now have a problem. All of us are at risk of driving home from this meeting tonight, being in an accident, being hospitalized, and on the third or fourth day that you were there at the hospital, being tested positive for COVID, and all of a sudden, no visitors. Zero. I'm getting calls left and right still that this is going on. This is my story. By the way, there are Kleenex up here. Let's give me an emotional one. I got married in 2001, and within 2 years, my wife started exhibiting some lupus autoimmune symptoms, and she was diagnosed officially with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis. And so, I should probably start my time here, make sure I don't go over. All right, thank you. So she was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, and dealt with all those health issues over the years, hospitalized numerous times. She nearly died while giving birth to our first son. In fact, the day that we found out that she was pregnant, her rheumatologist said, "Hey, this is the kind of lupus that is a significant danger to you, so you need to get an abortion." She fired him on the spot, had trouble finding another rheumatologist in town, ended up having to go to Denver. Sure enough, yeah, the doctors said it got really hairy in there. She lost a ton of blood. And fast forward, in 2014, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. Right after she had given birth to Matthew, our firstborn, she started complaining of chest pains. And the doctors always said, "Well, that's just the lupus, that's just the lupus, that's just the lupus." Well, it turned out 2014, actually 2013, she had a massive lupus flare-up that was finally taken care of in early 2014, spending 2 weeks on the anschutz. Fast forward 6 months, her heart went from perfect in March of 2014 to significantly enlarged and failing congestively in November of 2014. Doctors came to me and told me, "Steve, this is an end-of-life kind of situation. She may not make it out." And in fact, the head of pulmonology came to me, Dr. Badish, who all the nurses told me is world-renowned, came to me and said, "Steve, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but there's a very real possibility your wife won't be around to see your young niece graduate high school." So fast forward. Obviously, my wife is a very complicated case. acquired no doctor down here that we trust. To be honest, none that we've done. We went up to Anschutz because those are the best doctors in the state. And they were awesome. They were incredible. Those 2 stays in 2014, unbelievable. And the stays even before that. But fast forward to 2020. I'm in Wisconsin, getting ready for the boys basketball tournament. One of my college roommates is the #1 seed, undefeated. This is a team you talked about 10 years earlier, and COVID happens. Boys basketball tournament, and the day that the NCAA tournament was canceled and NBA postponed their season, Elizabeth called and said, "I think I have COVID." So I got a flight the next day, came home. She got tested that Monday. 2 weeks later, when the state finally got her results back, it was negative. But because at this point I started exhibiting symptoms, the doctors were like, "Oh, we still think it's COVID. It's a false negative." Over the course of 7 weeks, my wife was up and down, up and down. Never saw once by her doctor in person. Can't diagnose pneumonia or a blood infection over virtual visits. So April 28th, she woke up, 3 in the morning, thrown up. After 2 hours, she wasn't even able to keep a sip of Gatorade down. And it was at that point we knew, you gotta go to the hospital. So she goes to Memorial, immediately transferred up to Anschutz, and she gets tested at Memorial, negative. I go and I get tested immediately. I get results back the next day or the day after, I forget which it was. Negative. Sweet, we're both negative. I'll get in. They'll make an exception. I know they're not letting visitors in. They'll let me in. No. I call the CEO of UC Health. I started working my way up through the ranks. I finally called the CEO, and nobody's taking my calls except the head nurse and a patient advocate, who really, the patient advocates were nothing more than advocates for the hospital. So I make phone calls, no one will take any of my calls. After the first night Elizabeth was at Anschutz, she called me on a FaceTime call. And she said, "Steve, I genuinely thought I was going to choke to death on my own flight." So when I talked to the head nurse on the floor, who was the only person apparently that could make an exception, I said, "Please let me in." No. Well, when could I get in? Imminent death. Well, my wife thought she was going to die, choke to death on her own phlegm. It was a serious case of pneumonia. But, can I get in? No. I have my own personal protective equipment. I have masks, gloves, all that kind of stuff, because she had a Hickman line going into her chest that was pumping in meds 24/7 in order to keep that pulmonary hypertension, manageable. No. I'll abide by whatever rules you have. I'll be quarantined to her room, escorted in and out. If I leave, if I'm caught without a mask, and if I ever leave without that escort, no. So I started getting some media appearances. I started getting on the news, and I started raising some awareness about this problem, because I was here, at this point, I was hearing stories. I was hearing the story of women that were giving birth alone, with the nursing homes, the way in which they were shut down. I was hearing people that were in long-term hospital stays that were all alone. If study after study after study shows that having someone there in the hospital with you aids in the healing process, and conversely, study after study after study after study shows that isolation, loneliness kills. It increases mortality. Some studies I've seen, that's 26%, others said up to 52%. One study that I saw said the most lonely elderly patients versus the most socially connected elderly patients. The most lonely are 2.5 times more likely to die prematurely. So Mother's Day weekend, the day before Mother's Day at about 2 in the morning, I got a call from the hospital. Your wife is bleeding in one of her lungs. We're moving her to ICU. Don't come up doing what I could to get a TV camera out there and getting arrested. But because I didn't want to make this about me, I knew it would just do nothing but hurt Elizabeth and give her additional stress, and that was the last thing in the world I wanted to do. But believe me, when I hear people that come to me and say, oh, I would have done this, I wanted to. But I also didn't want to add that stress to Elizabeth. Got a call again about an hour and a half, 2 hours later. We think we've isolated it. It's a couple small arteries. We're cauterizing them, giving her a coagulant. Don't come up. The next day, Mother's Day, my wife was the most optimistic person that she could put a positive spin on anything. She was depressed. I leaned on almost 19 years, almost 20 years, of tips and tricks to get her to smile. Jokes, stupid crap that I would do. None of it worked. And our conversation turned to, what if this is the one I don't come home from? I told her, babe, as hard as this is going to be, I promise you we'll be okay, but you got to stick around for you. It's not the kinds of conversations you should have over FaceTime. So she started to improve. Eventually was put back down into the step-down ICU. And May 19th, we had a quick phone call. Actually, we had a number of phone calls over the course of that day. And she announced that they were looking to release her the next day, the day after, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the 20th, 21st, 22nd. And so at about 3 in the afternoon, I believe it was, maybe 4, we had an 11-minute FaceTime call where we were talking about details about, okay, what do you want for meals? What do you want to come over? I don't want to overwhelm you with love, but I'm going to stagger it at a pace that you can accept. 30 minutes later, I got a call from the hospital, and I thought, sweet. Details about picking her up tomorrow. Maybe they're releasing her today. Instead, the nurse told me, your wife has gone into cardiac arrest. You need to get up here now. I've been Falcon. Hour and a half for me to get up to Anschutz. 20 minutes into the drive, I called, said they were still doing CPR, and it was at that point I knew I was never going to see my wife alive again. Right around the time I got to IKEA, I called, and Dr. Bolter, the pulmonary doctor, her main pulmonary doctor, told me I couldn't save her. My story isn't the only one. So many people. Rachel Stovall, who introduced me to this group, her husband died in June. He was hospitalized, got COVID. The 4th day that he was there, all of a sudden, Rachel couldn't be there, and they were allowing one visitor for 1 hour who was not in the immediate. Fortunately, you got someone, but only 1 hour. What can you do for 1 hour for someone, especially someone that's incapacitated? 11 days Keith went without being bathed at Memorial. Before Rachel showed up at the ER, raised hell, called the CSPD as security was trying to escort her out and threatening her, as a way to record, so that way what security said was being recorded by 911, asked CSPD to do a welfare check. CSPD shows up, security's like, great, you can take her out. And they're like, no, dumbass, we're here to do the welfare check. They jaunt around the hospital a long way around, and Keith called Rachel, and he's like, what did you do? What do you mean? There's a whole lot of nurses and people in here bathing me, shoving protein drinks down my throat. Is that what we need to do for our loved ones that are in the hospital? gave birth alone during this pandemic. The way in which we shut off our elderly, cut them out. I have a friend up in Denver whose mom is in a nursing home with dementia. March of 2020, she knew who he was. 8 months later, when he finally got in, she didn't know him. The worst one that I heard, though, was an 8-year-old boy who was taken to the ER, broken arm, wouldn't let mom be in there, wouldn't even let the kid have his teddy bear. What kind of fear of the medical system is this kid going to have for the rest of his life? He's going to be 40 years old, have some chest pain or something, and be like, I'm fine. Leave his wife a widow and his kids orphans. So in 2020, Tim Geithner heard about my story, and he's like, let's try and get a quick bill before session closes. Hospital Association came in and gutted it right before committee, making it a requirement to a recommendation that the hospitals revisit their visitation policies. Dave, I'm so appreciative of you. You tried to put an amendment, and you passionately went for that, man. So you're my guy when it comes to Congress. Seriously, I like that. He was awesome. But even still, even this bill, 1425, House Bill 1425, there were still Democrats on the committee and in the House that voted against it. It had no teeth. It did nothing. It was a virtue signal. It was just saying to the hospitals, please reconsider your policies. We tried to get it in 21, and 0 Democrats voted for it in committee, so it died. So what can be done? We're likely going to try again. Try a little bit more lobbying to those committee members. North Carolina, fortunately, so after Elizabeth died, I created a nonprofit called the Never Alone Project. The idea is simply to mobilize a community to raise awareness about this problem. So that way we can get some legislative and regulatory change needed in order to protect the patient's right to have at least one screened visitor per day with no time limits. That's all I'm asking. So Tim and I have talked about running another bill, and we've also talked about possibly a ballot initiative, because really here in this state, that's probably the only way we're going to get anything done. That's going to cost a lot of money. So with the Never Alone Project, like I said, what we're trying to do is raise awareness. And there are 4 ways in which you can get involved. 1, you can just share. The website's neveralonepandemic.org. 2, you can connect. Doctors, nurses, politicians, other groups, people that I need to get to know, please introduce me. 3, volunteer, and 4, donate. So I'm taking these dollars and I'm trying to stretch them as far as I can. I just hired a virtual assistant in Nigeria for $7 an hour. He's a great dude. And here's the thing, when I posted this on Upwork, when I posted this job on Upwork, I had Philippines, India, Malaysia, all over the world. They applied for this job, and over and over and over and over. So many of them that applied, they're going through it in their country as well. They have this. This is a worldwide problem. Was there no plan when it came to a pandemic? Was this the plan all along? The plan failed. So, thank you, Carla, Kathy, Spunky Patriots. Never remember that. Thank you.
We got one last speaker for this evening, and we ask you to come back again in 2 weeks. We will be having some new speakers, and we'll be talking also, I'll be doing a segment on how to move forward with health and wellness under the current system of medical care that we have. So please come back for that. So our last speaker for this evening is Chaim Fultman.
Good evening, Patriots. Good evening. Oh, come on, let's do better than that. Excellent. Excellent. Well, my name's Chaim Goldman, and I'm so happy about this group, Spunky Patriots. This is such an amazing place where we get a forum where people can speak out. And so I am a person, I've been involved with Patriot groups for quite a while, and what we're seeing is hopelessness, right? Like we just heard. What can we do? And so what I like to do is I like initiatives. I like boots on the ground initiatives that you can get involved in. So we're going to finish up this evening. I'm presenting 2 rapid fire. They've given me 10 minutes, so I'm going to throw them at you, and then I'm going to be out there, and I hope that you're going to come talk to me, to ask me questions, and to sign up and get involved, because going to meetings is good. And taking action that actually moves the needle is much better. And so I want you to leave here tonight with something to do. So we got these 2 initiatives. Church voter guides. We did church voter guides because we wanted to activate the church. That's it. That's the main reason. Get the church involved and get them active. And that's almost an impossible thing to do, but you know what? We did it. And we did city council, and then we did, which way do I go on this? We did city council, and then we did school boards. And not saying we were the only ones, it was part of a whole ecosystem, but there were 4 major school boards in the area that went conservative. And now there are children that don't have to wear masks, and on, because the church got involved. And so we said, what can we do next? And so this is what we're doing next. We're activating the church all through Colorado to educate and motivate the church in El Paso County and in Colorado to the caucuses and the state assemblies and the primaries and the general elections and beyond. And the first thing that we're doing is we're activating the pastors, because we actually did something amazing is we got pastors to consider getting involved in the political realm with voter guides. We said, what can we do next? So we're going to them to activate them to explain very basically the caucus process and the delegation process to get them to activate their people so we can overwhelm the caucus on March 1st. Because that network is still active. And everything that I say here tonight, if you're already doing it, I want to know, because we don't have time to reinvent the wheel. We have until March 1st to meet this deadline, and it's an immovable deadline. And then caucus and delegates. We've had great caucus training, but we're going to make it really basic, keep it very short, and just tell people, this is what it's about, these are the days, this is what you need to do, show up. Because when we do the voter guide, which is what will come next, the voter guide, if we don't have Christian conservative candidates that are delegates, then there's nothing that we can do with the voter guide, because they won't like those candidates. We realize that. If they're not there, they'll read about them. So we want to activate the whole church. We're not backing any specific candidate, because we don't. We're 501c3 compliant. We're nonpartisan. But we want to activate the church for every kingdom candidate that's out there across the entire state. We believe, we're insane enough to believe, that we can actually do this, because but the church, these things are impossible, but when the church gets out, especially here in El Paso and around the state, we can do something. And then we have We the People, right? We're going to get out, and then networking. All of these groups, and I'm not going to be here on Friday evening, but if you have initiatives, let's plug into that. The groups need to work together. The fact that we have competing events is better than no events. Because a year and a half ago, we didn't have anything. But if we would talk to each other and network, we would gain much more power. That's why I like going around to all the groups, so that we can figure out how to do these things together. And then, of course, financial support, if you can give that, because we're building a coalition. The Road Church that my family attends, they got behind the voter guide. We're working with them on this, Pastor Steve Holt. They gave us a very generous end-of-year gift to fund us into this next section. But we want to go more. We want to have a whole coalition, because not only do we need to get people out to caucus, but we need people to do voter guides in each one of the counties. We'll do the state, we'll do El Paso here, but we can't do it for all the sheriffs and the county commissioners. We need, by the time we get to caucus, and by the time we get to the county assemblies, to have voter guides done. And so our first major deadline, as you probably know, is March 1st. That is when we go to caucus. You only need to get like 20 people out to your local, neighborhood. You all vote for each other. You're going to go to the county assembly on the 19th of March, and then a percentage of that will go to the state assembly. We need to get out. These are hard and fast dates. I thought that I could wait until the spring and then do the voter guide. I got schooled that we don't have that amount of time. And so doing this and getting out there, so you represent different churches here. Please come out and talk to me about this. Different churches, different pastors, organizations that are already doing caucus training. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. We don't have time. But we can activate the church around the state, and we're going to be doing, on the 25th of January at the Road Church in the morning, a breakfast for pastors. And if you want your pastor in, we're going to quickly teach them about this process, these dates, and what they can do to activate their church. Keep it simple. Pastors are busy, and get that done. And we're going to do this. We're crazy enough to believe that we can do it. So all you people that are doing caucus training and caucus, let's work together. Let's get everybody out, and then we'll do the voter guides together around the state to educate who are the candidates that people want to vote for, but we got to get the delegates there. We meet these deadlines, and we're going to change the state. And I have to tell you, El Paso County is the key to the state. This state is the key to the United States, and the United States to the world. It's coming out of here, El Paso County, and the Colorado blueprint came out of here. I feel that we get, who out of office up there. It's like throwing the bucket of water on the wicked witch. It's going to break this curse. Because the blueprint, when Polish was one of the Gang of Four from 20 years ago, that is being used to take over the country. We show them that it can be defeated here, and it breaks that spell, and we do it around the country. Amen? Amen? Because the church has to do this, because only God will get the glory when the church does it. Nobody else can do it. Okay, real quick. Tower Talk Radio. My background is television production. And I'm really excited, because when I was doing church voter guides, I went and I got interviewed on Mountain Country Radio. And what? Yeah, those guys. And I went to them afterwards. I said, can we do a public policy program, a local program to talk about what's going on? And they considered it, and they said, it's not for our demographic. And I went back with the second voter guide, and they said, we're going to tell you something that no one else knows. This was a couple months ago. We're doing an entire talk station here in El Paso County. And so they have this license. It's on AM during the day. It's on FM 24 hours a day. And right now it's mostly national, because they don't know about local people. And I'm a television producer and radio producer. I said, I'll find the people. I know the people. I go to these meetings. And so what we're going to do, you can hear it, they're changing from adult contemporary over to talk. And it's mostly national, but I want to fill it with all local and talk about everything. So it's KPPF, which stands for Pikes Peak Front Range. It's our station. We have a station. Is that exciting? Because the media, I don't know if you realize this, we're not really getting the story. But if we can put everything in our county out there in the light, drag it out in the light, make it transparent, then we will actually have a place where people can have conversations. And by the way, they're willing to have radical conversations that the other networks that are maybe more conservative and more national and aren't just focused on their local community, you can't put that stuff on there. So, is that my time up? then I will fly through this. 1 minute, okay. Okay, so the focus, to be the voice of Pikes Peak region of every topic our citizens care about. And so what we're looking for is local show hosts and topics. There's even a rumor out there that maybe Spunky Patriots might have a radio program. Okay, you guys willing to sponsor that? Because you know it does cost money to go on the radio. So we want to do that. I'm going to have a show cut for such a time as this on there and bring on people and talk about the issues. But I want to have a show on city council, on county commissioners, youth, high school sports, pick a topic, let's do a program about it. And the beautiful thing is, it's not just broadcast, so it's really on the air. But they're also live streaming it on their station. It'll be on YouTube and a podcast that's national, so people can tune in every week. If you're interested in the school boards, let's do the school boards, right? To get it out there. So what we also need is local sponsors. So you want to get behind it, you say, yeah, I'm here to package up the program. We get the money, we get the host, we get the content, we produce it each week, and we get it out there. That's what we're doing here. And then last thing, local and national guests. So I'm the contact for this. My number's down there. I'm going to be out there for either one of these that you want to get involved in, the Activate the Church or the radio. And I'm sure I know all the people running for office in here are going to want to be guests. I got you. Don't worry about that. We'll invite you on and do fair use. But if you want to be involved in any of these projects at all, please talk to me in the back. Let's do this. Let's activate the church all over, and let's get the voice of our county out there. So we're talking about everything. Yes, even vaccines and all of those other things that you never hear talked about. The guys who are running this, and it's being run out of mountain country, they're producing it. They're radical. They're open to it. They're willing to talk about anything. And we can have a voice, KPPF, Pikes Peak Front Range, here to transmit all around and to get our voices out. Everyone, and if you're a talent, you want to do a show or you want to sponsor a show, please talk to me. Thank you.
For Secretary of State, so we're going to give him his 2 minutes, and that's Mr. Dave Whitney.
My name is David Whitney, and I have a lot of, as your new Secretary of State, I have a lot of things that I'd like to accomplish. One of them is to clean up a lot of things, including our language. What is a politician? Poly means many.
Many ticks
means bloodsuckers. We have to get away from using that filthy term of politician and get back to being statesman. When you're describing the people that we were cheering on and that we would like to vote into office, we're talking about statesmen, not politicians. We need to clean our language of that permanently. Also, what's a government mandate, by the way? If I get elected, well, if I get elected as Secretary of State, and let's say Peter Lupia is clerk and recorder, and I say, Peter, can we get together so that we can have a cup of coffee and talk about what we just now had a Q&A about the voter rolls? And he says, yes, let's get together for coffee. That it then would be, if we're both elected officials, that would be a government mandate. Any other government mandate should be fought viciously against, because they have nothing that they can mandate to us other than to not murder people and things like that. You know, constitutional things that we should follow. But other than that, nothing. So there's a lot of things we'd like to clean up. They have demonized, I have found, while we're taking a class on candidates. My wife and I and Laura Land got to attend a candidate class. They demonized the words election integrity because we have gotten that so trashed out. You can't even say that in your campaigning. So what I'd like to do is transfer election integrity over to truth and transparency in our elections. We need to restore that, but not only that, the way that we restore truth and transparency is to the entire Colorado government, because I find that the Secretary of State is responsible for 4 divisions. One is information technology, which I have a huge background in, and I also have a background in project management, which will require to clean all this stuff up, but also responsible for administration for this government, the government of Colorado, and also the business licenses, and of course, we all know elections is one of those divisions. So we have a lot of, and I'm going to need a big room and a lot of people to help me clean all that stuff up. But we want truth and transparency, and because I was in the United States Marine Corps, and because I have my IT background, I have the background and the tenacity to get those things done. Thank you very much.